Futures trading involves a substantial risk of loss and may not be suitable for all investors. Therefore, carefully consider whether such trading is suitable for you in light of your financial condition.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, February 3rd. I'm Phil Streible, Chief Market Strategist at Blue Line Futures. So, looking at some of the overnight headlines, the impact on the market, the rundown on the precious metals. April gold, big snapback in the overnight session, up about $282, sitting at $49.35. So, the high of the overnight session was $49.74, just below that 5,000 mark. And the low in the session is $46.85. Remember, that contract high is about $56.28, and the average true range sits at about $215. Gold volatility really coming in this session here at 37. It's a big drop from yesterday. March silver, you got the lows in the overnight session at 79.26 and the high at 87.85. So looking at the verge of another breakout to the upside on the silver market. Now something to watch here, that average true range sitting right about $10.84, but silver volatility coming down quite a bit at $84. Couple things to note here. You look at the lows in December, I think that's your critical level of support here, and it's important to see those futures here bouncing above those lows. So yesterday's sell-off down to 71 would imply another higher low on the longer term charts. Now you look at the precious metal ETF flows, well, they're selling gold, silver, platinum, and palladium here. So the exchange traded funds, they cut about 170,000 troy ounces, and the biggest one-day decrease since November 4th for that gold market. Now you look at gold up about 7.9% coming into today's session and tacking on about 6%, so up about 13% as of this recording here year to date. You look at silver with those ETFs, they're continuing those outflows here, and a big sell-off here yesterday. Big cut on the ETF flows, down 5.41 million troy ounces of silver. So we'll see if those FOMO buyers and sellers here come back into the market with this big break here to the upside, up about $8.94. But we have had 8 straight days of declines on the ETF flows. Now the gold silver ratio is sitting at about 57-1. And then you look at the broader markets here. Part of the reason why we're seeing that snapback in metals, remember we got about a 93% inverse correlation between the dollar index and the gold market, and gold, or in the dollar index here, sliding in this overnight session a bit, helping boost that gold market up. Now we are seeing 10-year treasury yields sit at about 4.29%, so quite elevated here. Now you look at stock futures up a bit here with the S&P 500 firmly over 7,000 mark. You got the NASDAQ up 100 points and the Russell 2000, big bounce back yesterday, sitting at about 26.52. So we did have Palantir. They had their results come out, and it was a blockbuster beat here across the board. And then you'll also have Pepsi, Pfizer, and AMD due out today. Friday's non-farm payroll number, unfortunately, is going to be delayed because of this government shutdown that's in effect. And out of the 178 S&P 500 companies that have reported so far, 79% have managed to beat those analyst forecasts, while 16 have missed. Now looking at the CME's Fed Watch Tool, March 18th meeting, only a 9% likelihood they're going to cut rates here. June 17th, we're looking at about a 56% chance. That's when we should have Powell out of office, and then we'll have Kevin Warsh back into play. However, you're seeing the yield curve steepening here. You're seeing the dollar index come off, so that hawkish rhetoric that they were really throwing around Warsh, I think, is starting to dissolve. You look at the dollar index again, 97.47, ticking a bit here since the start of this recording. Euro currency getting a little bit of a boost at 118.13. WTI crude oil, big sell-off yesterday on some Iran talks that are taking place here yesterday. Now we're seeing crude oil futures stabilizing, pushing a bit back up here, 62.25. You got 10-year treasury yields again at 4.29%. The VIX at 18.05. You do have Bitcoin futures rebounding just a touch at 78,400. Ethereum slightly weaker here, in S&P Gamma exposure sitting at neutral. You look across the pond to Europe and Asia. Well, European stocks, they hit a fresh record high, and Asian stocks, they bounce back after Monday's drop, with the MSCI Pacific Index rising 3.1% and on pace for its best day since April. And remember, that's when the tariffs were taking place. So I'm sick as a dog over here, and including the dog. The dog's even sick. My daughter's sick, and my wife is sick. So we got a house full of joyous people here today, with a lot of cold going on around here, a lot of volatility in the weather, and that could be playing in some of that role here. And speaking of volatility, huge sell-off, like 25% yesterday in that natural gas market, stabilizing a bit here with the March contract at 322. So we'll see what happens, how things will play out. We'll see if those gold futures can push back through that 5,000 mark. Could be some of that FOMO buying, some of the algos coming into the market, and a nice push back through 5,000 should grab some headlines in the markets, and especially from a lot of the media sources out there. So if you guys got any questions, shoot an email, info@bluelinefutures.com. Remember, futures and option trading does involve risk of loss, may not be suitable to all investors. Good luck, good trading.
Futures trading involves a substantial risk of loss and may not be suitable for all investors. Therefore, carefully consider whether such trading is suitable for you in light of your financial condition.